Welcome to the deep dive. We've gathered your questions about daily nutrition.
Yeah, lots of good ones.
And today, we're going to try and unpack them.
Yeah.
Our goal is pretty straightforward. Give you a clearer picture of what a balanced diet really means.
Right. How the nutrients work, maybe some common pitfalls to avoid.
And some practical stuff you can actually do. We're pulling all this straight from the questions you send in.
Exactly. So think of it like your personalized guide, really, based on what you're curious about.
Okay, let's dive right in. The absolute basics. What makes up a balanced diet? What are the core things?
Well, at its heart, it really boils down to variety. Consistently getting foods from all the main groups.
Like fruits, veggies.
Yep, fruits, vegetables, grains, good protein sources, and dairy or the dairy alternatives. Getting that mix helps ensure you cover your bases, nutrient-wise.
Sort of like painting a picture, you need all the different colors.
That's a great analogy, actually. Yeah, you need that full spectrum.
Okay. Now, we hear terms like macronutrients and micronutrients thrown around a lot. Carbs, proteins, fats versus vitamins, minerals. How do they, work together?
Okay, so think of the macronutrients, carbs, proteins, fats as the big stuff. They're your fuel, your building blocks. Your body needs quite a bit of them.
Right, for energy and structure.
Exactly. Carbs are the main energy source. Proteins for repair, growth, muscles. Fats are crucial too for hormones, absorbing certain vitamins, cell function.
The micros.
The micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals, they're needed in much smaller amounts, but they're like the mechanics, the spark plugs. They enable all the processes that use the macros.
Okay, so they help the fuel actually work.
Precisely. They have this synergistic relationship. They absolutely need each other. If one piece is missing, it can really hinder how others function.
Got it. Fuel and the tools to use the fuel. Makes sense. Now, are there common areas where people tend to fall short, nutritionally speaking? Any typical gaps?
Well, your questions didn't pinpoint specifics, but generally speaking, yes. Sometimes people might not get enough of certain vitamins or minerals.
Why is that, usually?
Often it can be diets heavy in, say, highly processed foods, which might lack some of those essential micronutrients. And these kinds of gaps, over time, they can impact energy, maybe even mood, general well-being.
Definitely something to watch out for then.
Yeah.
Okay, another big one. Portion control. How important is that, really?
Oh, it's fundamental. But, it's not about being super rigid or restrictive.
Right, not about tiny portions of everything?
No, not necessarily. It's more about mindfulness, about paying attention to how much food your body actually needs versus, say, how much is on the plate just because it's there.
So tuning into hunger and fullness cues.
Exactly that. Maybe using slightly smaller plates sometimes helps, or just pausing during a meal. It's really about awareness, not deprivation.
Awareness. I like that framing.
Yeah.
What about supplements? Are they necessary for most of us?
Generally, for most healthy people who are eating a reasonably varied diet, supplements probably aren't needed. Your food should be the primary source.
Food thirst.
Always. But there are specific situations, maybe a diagnosed deficiency, certain life stages, medical conditions where a doctor or dietitian might recommend one.
So they're meant to supplement, not replace.
That's the key word. They fill specific gaps. They don't substitute for a good diet overall.
Okay, crystal clear. Let's talk energy and mood. Is there a real connection between what we eat and how we feel?
Nope.
Physically and mentally?
Absolutely. A very strong link. What you eat directly impacts your blood sugar levels.
Which affects energy, right?
Big time. Think about that sugar rush and crash. But it's more than just energy. Nutrients are also building blocks for neurotransmitters.
Brain chemicals.
Yeah, the chemicals in your brain that regulate mood, like serotonin. So poor nutrition can definitely contribute to feeling sluggish or even affect your emotional state. We've all felt that 3 p.m. slump after maybe a less than ideal lunch.
Haven't we just? Okay, shifting gears slightly. We see so many diet trends, keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, you name it. Is there usually some science behind them?
Often, yes. There's usually some scientific rationale or theory that kicks off a popular diet trend.
But do they work long term?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Their effectiveness and, more importantly, their suitability really varies from person to person. And sustainability is key. Can you actually stick with it? Does it fit your life? That's often more important than the specific rules of the diet itself.
So it comes back to being personalized and sustainable. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about food labels? They can be pretty confusing. Any quick tips for navigating them?
There definitely can be tricky. One common point of confusion is the serving size.
Right. Sometimes it's tiny.
Exactly. And the nutrition info is based on that serving size, not necessarily how much you actually eat. So check that first. Beyond that, looking at the ingredients list is useful. Fewer ingredients, more whole foods is usually better, and maybe glance at fiber, added sugars, and saturated fats.
Okay, focus on serving size and ingredients. Good tips. And this term eating clean, we hear that a lot. What does it generally imply?
Yeah, eating clean isn't a strict scientific term, but it generally means focusing on whole, minimally processed foods.
Like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins.
Right, things closer to their natural state. And it usually implies limiting refined sugars, artificial ingredients, unhealthy fats, and heavily processed items. Basically, more from the farm, less from the factory is a simple way to think about it.
More nature, less factory. Got it. So wrapping up, if you had to give one core principle for building healthy eating habits that actually last, what would it be?
I'd say focus on small, gradual changes. Don't try to overhaul everything overnight.
Like adding one more serving of vegetables a day or swapping soda for water.
Exactly, those kinds of things. Small steps that feel manageable. Building healthy habits is really a journey. It's not a race or a quick fix. Sustainability is everything. Making changes you can genuinely live with long term.
Okay, great summary. So the big takeaways seem to be aim for that balance and variety, understand nutrients as like fuel and tools, be mindful with portions, and focus on building sustainable habits gradually.
That captures it perfectly. It's
Mhm.
about creating an approach to eating that truly nourishes you and that you can stick with.
Fantastic. And maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Reflecting on our chat today, maybe it's the food energy link or the mood connection, or perhaps just decoding those food labels, which one of these nutritional aspects feels most relevant or interesting for you to explore a bit more for your own well-being right now could be a good starting point. Thanks for diving deep with us.